The afternoon started quietly. The sky was soft and bright, and a warm breeze moved across the park like a gentle hand. It was the kind of day that made parents bring their children outside just to breathe easier. Tiana Brooks walked slowly along the paved path with her little daughter, Maya, holding her hand, to everyone watching. Tiana looked like any other single black mom trying to give her child a peaceful afternoon. No one could guess who she really was, or what she was capable of. Tiana worked for the FBI, but she never talked about it. Not even her closest neighbors knew. Her job demanded silence, patience. In a mask that hid her true identity, she was assigned to watch over areas where reports of police misconduct kept rising. And the park was one of those places. She wasn't there on official duty that day, but she never fully relaxed. Her instincts moved with her everywhere she went. Maya ran ahead to the swings, giggling as her small feet kicked at the sand. Tiana watched her with a tired smile. She had been working long hours all week and wanted nothing more than a calm afternoon with her daughter. She sat down on a nearby bench, her bag rested beside her, and she let herself breathe. A few minutes later, 2 police officers entered the park from the far end. Tiana noticed them immediately, not because they were in uniform, but because their eyes looked restless. They scanned the park like hunters. Searching for someone to pick on, their walk was slow. But their minds felt sharp and impatient. Tiana straightened slightly. Her instincts whispered that something was off. The taller officer pointed toward a teenage boy sitting on the grass. The boy wore headphones and didn't notice them at all. He was just enjoying his music, unaware that he had become their next target. The shorter officer rolled his shoulders as if he was preparing for trouble. Tiana knew the look. She had seen it many times during investigations. Officers who believed the uniform gave them unlimited power. Officers who acted without fear of consequences. She reached into her bag and quietly tapped her phone on. She didn't lift it, and she didn't point it at anyone. But the audio recorder began working. Maya came running back, holding a few tiny flowers she had picked from the grass. "Mommy, look what I found," she said. Tiana smiled, but before she could respond, a loud shout ripped across the calm air. "Hey! Take off that hoodie." The taller officer yelled at the teenage boy. The boy froze, pulling off his headphones with confusion. He had done nothing wrong. Tiana's jaw tightened. She knew this wasn't a lawful stop. It was harassment, pure and simple. The boy's eyes filled with fear, and people around him started watching. Tiana placed a steady hand on Maya's shoulder and told her to stay close. She rose from the bench, not to interfere, but to stay aware. She had a responsibility to protect her child and to observe the officer's behavior. Before she took a full step, the shorter officer turned and saw her. His expression changed instantly. Annoyance flashed in his eyes, followed by arrogance. "You there," he snapped. "Stop recording and move back." Tiana hadn't even lifted her phone, but she also knew she didn't need his permission to stand near her daughter. She didn't like his tone, and she didn't like the way he looked at her. "I'm standing with my child," she answered calmly. Her calmness only made him more irritated. He stepped toward her with his chest puffed out. His hand moved to the baton at his hip. "You're interfering," he barked. Tiana held her ground. "I'm not," she said. "I'm just watching my daughter play." What happened next shocked the entire park. The officer grabbed her arm with sudden force. Twisting it backward, Maya screamed and rushed to her mother. Tears ran down the little girl's cheeks as she clung to Tiana's leg. People gasped. Phones came out. The teenage boy looked terrified. The taller officer tried to pull his partner back. But the man was lost in his own anger. He shoved Tiana, and she stumbled. But she didn't fall. Her phone hit the ground. But she didn't panic. She lifted her head slowly. Her expression changed from mother to something colder and sharper. Something trained. She rose to her full height. Her eyes locked on the officer. "You just assaulted a federal agent?" she said quietly. Every word hit the air like a stone dropped in water. The officer froze. His face went pale. His hand moved away from the baton. The taller officer blinked, confused. Tiana reached into her jacket and pulled out her badge. The golden emblem caught the sunlight. Everyone who saw it gasped. The officer who had grabbed her stepped back like he had touched fire. The moment Tiana raised her badge, the whole energy of the park changed. People who had been frozen in fear suddenly found their voices. Phones were already recording, but now whispers spread fast. Children stopped playing. Parents pulled them close. And even the birds seemed to quiet down. The officer who grabbed her stared as if he had just woken up from a terrible dream. His face turned pale and stiff, like he was trying to figure out how to undo what he had done. But it was too late. Tiana didn't shout. She didn't lose control. Her training taught her that calmness was more powerful than anger. She picked up her phone from the ground, brushed the dirt off, and checked that the recording was still active. It was Maya still clung to her side, her small hand shaking. Tiana placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's head. "It's okay, baby," she whispered softly. Maya nodded but didn't let go. The taller officer swallowed hard and stepped forward. "Ma'am." "Agent?" "We didn't know," he stammered. Tiana looked at him with eyes steady enough to cut glass. "You should treat everyone like you don't know," she replied. "That's the job." The officer lowered his gaze, ashamed. But the one who had twisted her arm was still frozen, breathing fast. His eyes on the badge as if it was a weapon pointed at him. Tiana took a slow breath and then turned her attention to the teenage boy who had been harassed moments earlier. He stood there holding his hoodie in his hands, unsure of what to do, fear still clinging to him. "Are you hurt?" Tiana asked. The boy shook his head quickly. "No, ma'am," he said. "I didn't do anything." "They just started yelling. You didn't do anything wrong," she confirmed. Her voice calm but strong. "You were targeted." The boy's eyes softened with relief. Someone nearby recorded every second. Parents nodded, murmuring in support in the middle of all this. The officer who grabbed her finally found his voice. "This is a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "We reacted because you thought I was powerless," Tiana answered sharply. And because he was young and alone, the officer opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tiana stepped closer to him, not aggressively, but with authority that filled the air. "You don't get to rewrite what happened," she said. "Not today." The officer stepped back. His confidence was gone, replaced by something like fear. Not fear of punishment, but fear of exposure. He glanced at the people around him and saw nothing but eyes watching. Judging, recording, it was the first time he had to face the consequences in real time. Tiana reached into her bag and pulled out a small black notebook. She flipped it open with practiced ease. "Name," she said calmly, pen ready. The officer hesitated. "Your name," she repeated. Sharper this time. He gave it, voice shaky. She wrote it down, asked for his badge number. Then his partners, both officers, obeyed without argument. The crowd watched with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. Maya tugged her shirt gently. "Mommy, can we go now?" she asked. Tiana knelt down to look at her daughter's face. "Soon," she said softly. "I need to finish this first." She stroked Maya's cheek, and some calm returned to the little girl's eyes. When Tiana stood again, more people stepped forward. A woman in a blue dress said, "We saw everything." "We can give statements," a man added. "I got the whole thing on my phone." Tiana nodded. Grateful but composed. "Thank you," she said. "Your videos may be needed." She turned to the officers one last time. "You will both file incident reports," she instructed, "and they will match the truth, every detail. If you leave out what happened here, I will know." They nodded quickly. The officer who had grabbed her looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground, just when things seemed to settle. A police car pulled up fast beside the park entrance. 2 more officers stepped out. Confused by the quiet crowd and the tension in the air, the older one asked, "What's going on here?" His tone was cautious, not aggressive. Tiana stepped forward, holding out her badge. "Assault on a federal agent," she said. Right here in front of children and families, the older officer raised his brows, looked at the trembling officer who had grabbed her, then back at Tiana. "Understood," he said, his voice steady. "We'll handle it." Before anyone else could ask questions, he turned toward his fellow officer. Secure the scene. The park now felt like an active investigation zone. People didn't move closer. But they didn't leave either. They wanted to see justice. They wanted to see the system hold itself accountable for once. Mothers whispered to their kids, teenagers whispered to each other, and Maya leaned into her mother, trusting her completely. Tiana stood strong, calm, and unshaken. She wasn't just a mom anymore. She wasn't just an observer. She was the storm standing in the middle of the park, forcing the truth into the light. And the officers who thought she was just another powerless woman finally understood who they were dealing with. The news of what happened spread through the park faster than anyone expected. People whispered, pointed, and stayed close. Nobody wanted to miss what came next. Tiana stood near the playground with Maya, holding her hand tightly. Her badge still visible, her notebook still open. She looked calm. But inside she was calculating her next move. Her training never allowed her to leave a situation unfinished. The two responding officers spoke quietly with the taller officer, who explained the situation with nervous glances toward Tiana. The one who had grabbed her kept his head down. His chest rose and fell quickly as if he was trying not to panic. He knew what he had done. He knew what the consequences could be. And for the first time, he was the one who felt powerless. Tiana watched them without blinking. She needed to understand the chain of command, the behavior pattern, and the motive behind the two officers' actions. This wasn't a random outburst. Her instincts told her something deeper was happening in the precinct. This kind of behavior didn't appear out of nowhere. It grew from a system that allowed it to thrive. A woman in the crowd stepped forward and introduced herself. "I'm Carla," she said. "I come to this park every week. And these two officers always pick someone to bother." Tiana's eyes sharpened. "Always?" she asked. Carla nodded. "Always," she repeated. "They search bags without reason, threaten kids, yell at anyone who isn't moving fast enough." "It's been months." Another man stepped closer. Holding his phone, "I have videos from last week," he said quietly. "Them harassing a father who was pushing a stroller." Tiana took a deep breath. This wasn't just misconduct, it was a pattern. And if the precinct hadn't stopped them yet, there was a reason. "Send those to this email," she said as she wrote it down in her notebook. The man nodded, grateful to finally have someone who cared. While she gathered statements, Maya tugged her hand again. "Mom, can we leave now?" Her voice small, Tiana knelt beside her daughter. Brushing a curl from her forehead, "Soon, sweetheart," she whispered. "I promise." Maya nodded and held tighter. She didn't understand everything, but she felt the tension in the air. The older responding officer approached Tiana cautiously. "Agent Brooks," he said, "we need to take statements from everyone involved." Tiana closed her notebook. "Good," she replied. "Make sure none of them are intimidated or dismissed." He nodded quickly. He could sense her authority and wasn't willing to challenge it. "We'll do it properly," he said. But the officer who had attacked her finally broke his silence. "This isn't fair," he muttered under his breath. His partner shot him a warning look. Tiana turned toward him slowly. "Fair?" She repeated. "You think fairness is grabbing an unarmed mother in front of her child?" The officer clenched his jaw but didn't respond. His eyes darted around as if looking for someone to defend him. No one did. Tiana stepped closer. "Do you know how many complaints have been filed against you?" she asked. He looked stunned. "Complaints?" he echoed. "People complain all the time." Tiana didn't flinch. "They complain because you abuse your power," she said. "And because no one in your chain of command stops you?" The officer swallowed. Suddenly, the truth felt heavier than the badge on his chest. A small group of teenagers walked over. "One of them holding a skateboard, ma'am," one of them said shakily. "Last month, those same officers slammed my friend against the fence because he was walking too fast. We tried to report it, but nobody listened." Tiana took down every detail, her notebook filling with testimonies that painted a clear picture of a precinct that had stopped protecting and started intimidating. The older responding officer heard the teens and looked troubled. "Didn't know any of this," he said quietly. Tiana studied him. He didn't look like he was lying. He looked like someone who had been kept out of the loop. It told her something important. The problem wasn't the entire force. It was a protected circle inside it, just as Tiana finished taking the teens' statements. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the park entrance. The crowd parted slowly when a man in a gray suit stepped out. his posture stiff, his expression unreadable. He walked straight toward the officers. His badge clipped to his belt said Internal Affairs. The entire atmosphere shifted again. He reached Tiana and offered a respectful nod. "Agent Brooks," he said. "We received your alert." Tiana raised an eyebrow. "I didn't send one," she replied. The IA officer nodded once. "Your audio recorder did." Tiana checked her phone and realized the FBI autosync system had flagged the incident. It had automatically notified Internal Affairs as soon as violence was detected. The officer who grabbed her went pale again. The IA agent looked at him with eyes colder than steel. "Officer Hale," he said slowly, "we need to talk." Hale's legs almost buckled. He finally understood there was no escaping what he had done. Tiana placed her arm around Maya and finally exhaled. The situation was no longer just an incident. It was now evidence, a report, a chain reaction starting to unfold. And the precinct was about to learn that the woman they attacked wasn't just an agent. She was the one person capable of exposing everything they thought they had buried. The Internal Affairs agent didn't waste time. He walked past the crowd, straight toward Officer Hale. The man who had grabbed Tiana, Hale's shoulders tightened. Every step IA took toward him felt like another nail ceiling, a door that was closing fast. He looked around for support, but no one stepped in. The families watching. The teenagers who had given statements, the parents holding their phones high, they were all witnesses he couldn't escape now. Tiana stood quietly with Maya pressed against her leg. She watched the scene with calm control, but her mind worked like a machine, piecing together what she had learned. This wasn't just two officers acting out of line. This was a culture inside the precinct. A pattern strong enough that multiple people had stories ready on their tongues. Something bigger was happening behind the scenes. The IA agent spoke low enough that only the officers nearest him heard, but the tension in their faces showed everything. The taller officer looked ashamed, but Hale looked furious. His pride battled with fear, and fear was winning. "This is out of context," Hale snapped suddenly. She is a federal agent," the IA man interrupted. "And you assaulted her." Hale's jaw moved. But no words came out. The IA agent continued. "You will remain here until you're escorted to the precinct for questioning." Hale took a step back. "Questioning," he repeated, his voice cracking. "Questioning." The IA agent didn't blink. "Yes, questioning," he said. "And suspension until further review," the crowd murmured. People nodded. Justice wasn't common. And no one expected it to unfold in front of them on a warm afternoon. Tiana shifted her attention to Maya. Kneeling to look at her, "You okay, baby?" she whispered. Maya nodded slowly, her small fingers gripping her mother's sleeve. Tiana smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead. "We're almost done," she promised, just as she stood again. A young mother stepped forward holding a stroller. "Agent Brooks," she said softly. Can I talk to you?" Tiana gave her a reassuring nod. "Of course," she replied. The woman took a shaky breath. 2 months ago. "Those same officers followed me to my car," she said. "I was with my baby. They accused me of stealing my own diaper bag." Her voice trembled. "They told me if I argued, they'd take my child." Tiana felt her chest tighten. The woman looked at the ground, ashamed. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't have anyone to call." Tiana wrote everything down. Her notebook was filling fast. Each story confirmed what she already suspected. "Thank you for telling me," she said gently. The woman wiped her eyes and whispered, "Please make them stop." Tiana's voice softened, but her words rang firm. "I will," she said. "That's why I'm here," while she gathered more information. Another patrol car arrived, this one slower. Quieter, more cautious. 2 senior officers stepped out. Their posture wasn't aggressive. It was controlled. They looked around the park, taking in the witnesses, the phones, the shattered sense of trust hanging in the air. One of them approached IA. "We heard the call," he said. "And we heard the recording." The IA agent nodded sharply. "Good," he said. "Then you know what we're dealing with?" The senior officer's expression darkened. "I warned the captain about this months ago," he said quietly. But he brushed it off. Tiana's attention snapped to that. She stepped closer. The captain knew. she asked. The senior officer didn't hesitate. Yes, he said. Complaints went nowhere because he didn't want department drama. Tiana's eyes hardened. That was the missing piece. The behavior wasn't just tolerated. It was protected, a pattern built on silence, ignorance, and intimidation. The IA agent turned to her, Agent Brooks. Can we request your full statement now? He asked. Tiana nodded, handing Maya her water bottle so she could sit on the bench nearby. Let's do it, she said. The IA agent opened a folder. We will also need copies of all civilian videos, he added. The crowd responded immediately. People stepped forward offering their recordings, screenshots, timestamps. Some even shared older videos as evidence of long-running issues. The boldness in the crowd came from seeing someone with power actually listening, actually taking things seriously. Hale's face twisted while this happened. You people are exaggerating, he yelled, his voice cracked. Sweat slid down his temple. The EAA agent didn't move. Officer Hale, he said calmly. Every word you speak right now is being recorded. Hale froze. Shoulders falling, anger draining into dread. Finally, after taking her statement and reviewing the recordings, the IA agent stepped aside to make a call. His voice was serious, professional, and sharp. Tiana didn't hear every word, but she caught enough. Yes, sir, he said. Federal involvement confirmed. A pause. Then, yes, multiple civilian statements. Yes, sir. Understood. When he hung up, he walked back to Tiana with a grim set in his jaw. Agent Brooks, he said, your report has activated a higher-level review. Tiana raised an eyebrow. How high? She asked. He exhaled slowly. Department of Justice oversight. The crowd gasped. Even the senior officers stiffened. The DOJ stepping in meant this wasn't small anymore. It wasn't local power. It was national accountability. Tiana looked around the park. The witnesses, the shaken officers. Her daughter, sitting quietly on the bench, drinking water, and understood something clearly. This wasn't just about what happened to her. It was about everything that had been allowed to happen before her. And now the entire precinct would have to answer for it. News traveled through the precinct faster than a siren. By the time the Department of Justice alert hit internal channels, Captain Rourke, head of the district, was already pounding down the hall toward the briefing room. His face was red, jaw tight, and his temper barely contained. He'd worked hard to build an image of control, authority, and untouchable power. But one thing he never expected was that the woman his officers assaulted today was an undercover FBI agent. In the park, Tiana felt the shift too. The IA agent had just finished telling her that the DOJ would oversee the case. And even he seemed slightly nervous. That kind of oversight didn't happen unless the situation was serious. Maya leaned against her, calmer now, sipping juice from her little bottle. Tiana stroked her daughter's back as she kept scanning the area, making sure nothing got past her. More officers arrived from the precinct, their faces tense, unsure whether to stand near Hale or stay far away from him. Hale sat on the curb now, head hanging, hands shaking. He looked like a man waiting for a sentence he already knew he deserved. His partner stood a few feet away, silent, ashamed, trying not to draw attention. The senior officer who had spoken earlier walked toward Tiana again. Captain Rourke is on his way, he said in a low voice. Tiana looked up slowly. Good, she replied. I've been wanting to meet him. The officer swallowed hard. Be careful, he warned. He doesn't like being challenged. Tiana didn't blink. Neither do I, she said 10 minutes later. A black police SUV came barreling down the road. Stopping sharply near the park entrance, Captain Rourke stepped out. His uniform crisp, his shoulders wide, his expression sharp and ready for war. He walked with the confidence of a man who believed the world still belonged to him. But the moment he saw the IA agent, that confidence faltered for a second. A tiny second, but Tiana caught it. He approached fast, eyes fixed on the IA agent. What is this about? He demanded, why is DOJ involved in a park disturbance? The IA agent didn't respond with fear. He pulled out his tablet and tapped a screen. Assault on a federal agent, he said. And we have civilian recordings, witness statements. An audio confirming misconduct. Rourke's eyes widened only briefly before he masked it with anger. That's impossible, he snapped. My officers follow protocol. Tiana stepped forward calmly. Maya still holding her hand? Not today they didn't, she said. Rourke's gaze snapped to her. His eyes narrowed with annoyance the moment he saw she wasn't intimidated, and you are. He asked sharply. Tiana lifted her badge with her free hand. Special Agent Tiana Brooks, she replied. FBI. Rourke's jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Maybe because he didn't expect the federal badge. Maybe because he realized instantly how much trouble he was in. Or maybe because he recognized her name from somewhere. The name whispered in higher circles when misconduct cases appeared. The agent known for not backing down. Rourke turned to Hale. What did you do? He hissed. Hale stammered. Sir, it was chaotic. She refused to stop. Rourke cut him off sharply. Then he turned back to Tiana, Agent Brooks. I'm sure this was a misunderstanding, he said, trying to sound polite. My officer didn't know who you were. Tiana's expression didn't change. You mean he didn't know I had power? She corrected him. Because he certainly didn't hesitate to hurt me in front of my daughter, the crowd murmured. Parents shook their heads. Teenagers whispered angrily. Rourke shifted uncomfortably under the eyes of everyone watching. Let's take this to the precinct, Rourke insisted. We don't need to cause a scene in a public park. Tiana raised an eyebrow. Your officers caused the scene, she said. I just protected myself. Rourke tried again. Still. This should be handled internally. The IA agent stepped between them. No, he said calmly. This is already above your authority now, Rourke blinked in shock. Above my authority? He repeated. The IA agent nodded. A DOJ investigator will supervise the case. Rourke's face lost a shade of confidence he couldn't afford to lose in front of his officers. He turned to the senior officer. You knew about this? He demanded. The senior officer didn't flinch. I reported the behavior months ago, he said quietly. You ignored it. The crowd gasped again. Tiana watched Rourke's face shift from anger to panic. He looked trapped, cornered, in a way he had never experienced before. The IA agent continued, We will also investigate whether you suppressed those reports. Rourke's breath caught. His eyes darted around, looking for a way out. But there wasn't one. Tiana held Maya's hand tightly. Feeling her daughter's trust steady her even more, she took a slow breath and spoke clearly. Everything that happened today is part of a bigger pattern, she said. And now it's going to come out. Rourke tried to speak, but nothing came out. He looked like a man watching his entire career slip through his fingers. And as the sun started dipping behind the trees, the truth became impossible to hide. The captain who once believed he was untouchable was finally learning that even the highest badge couldn't shield him from justice. Not today, not with her standing in front of him. The ride to the precinct felt heavier than the air itself. Tiana sat in the back of the IA vehicle with Maya on her lap. Maya leaned against her chest, tired but calmer now. The IA agent drove in silence. Respecting the quiet tension in the car, Tiana stared out the window, her mind turning through everything she had heard at the park. Every story, every witness, every frightened face confirmed what she already suspected. Something rotten lived inside the precinct, something deep and old, and she was now walking straight into its center. When they arrived, the precinct buzzed with a nervous energy. Officers stood in small clusters, whispering harshly, glancing toward the entrance every few seconds. Word had spread an FBI agent had been assaulted, internal affairs was involved, and the Department of Justice was already watching. The building that once felt powerful now felt trapped under its own roof. The IA agent opened the door for Tiana. We'll handle this floor, he said calmly. You just follow me. Tiana nodded. Holding Maya's hand as they walked through the automatic doors, the noise inside softened. Conversations dropped to whispers, eyes widened. Some officers stepped aside quickly, unsure how to behave. They weren't used to accountability walking in through the front door. The first person to approach was Sergeant Lane, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a steady spine. She looked at Tiana with respect. Agent Brooks. "We've set up a private room for your daughter," she said. "Snacks, crayons, and a place for her to rest." Maya looked up uncertainly. Tiana knelt down and held her face gently. "You'll be safe," she whispered. "I'll be right here." Maya nodded and followed the sergeant, her small steps slow but brave. Once Maya was safely inside the room, Tiana stood tall again. The IA agent guided her toward the main conference room. "The DOJ investigator will call in soon," he said in the meantime. "Captain Rourke is being questioned." Tiana didn't respond, but her jaw tightened. Rourke wasn't her main concern anymore. There were layers beneath him, officers who had acted freely because someone high up protected them, enabled them, or demanded their silence when the conference room doors opened. She found half a dozen officers already inside, some sitting stiffly, others pacing. One younger officer lifted his head and quickly looked away, shame written across his face. Another stared at the floor as if wishing he could disappear. None of them were under arrest yet, but the air felt like handcuffs were already closing around the precinct. The IA agent motioned to a chair. Tiana took her seat, keeping her back straight. Then the door opened again. Senior Officer Miller, the one who had tried to warn Rourke months ago, stepped inside. He nodded at Tiana respectfully and sat across the table. His voice was calm when he spoke. "I'm glad you didn't back down," he said. "Most people who try to report this place get ignored." Tiana studied him. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. Miller sighed. "Years," he said. Rourke built a wall around his favorites, Hale being one of them. Tiana leaned in. "Why protect them?" Miller hesitated, then answered, "Because they did what he wanted. They were his enforcers." Tiana's eyes sharpened at that word. "Enforcers," she repeated. Miller nodded. "Anyone who complained, questioned orders, or challenged authority. They made sure those people stopped talking before she could ask more." The door opened again. This time, the room fell completely silent. Two DOJ investigators walked in, suits crisp, expressions unreadable. Their presence changed the temperature of the room. They didn't need badges to command respect. The entire precinct knew what DOJ intervention meant: serious crimes, federal oversight, and consequences that couldn't be erased. One investigator introduced himself. "I'm Investigator Rowan," he said. "My partner is Investigator Chen." Then he turned to Tiana. "Agent Brooks, we reviewed the recordings," he said. "Everything?" Tiana nodded, waiting. Rowan continued. "Your audio automatically transmitted to the federal channel?" Tiana already suspected that. "The system was designed to protect undercover agents." "We also received civilian videos," he added. "Many." Chen stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the table. "We've already found patterns," she said. "Excessive force, harassment, intimidation. Evidence of report suppression." Miller looked down. Ashamed for the department he had served honestly, Chen continued. "And Captain Rourke attempted to block 3 prior IA investigations." The room froze completely at that sentence. Tiana leaned back in her chair, eyes steady. "So it's bigger than 2 officers," she said quietly. Rowan nodded. "Much bigger," he replied. "We believe Rourke protected certain officers because they helped him manipulate arrest numbers and intimidate people who complained," Chen added. "And your incident triggered enough evidence to open a full corruption probe?" The door burst open suddenly, and Captain Rourke appeared flanked by 2 internal officers. His face was twisted with disbelief and rage. "You can't do this," he barked. "You can't." Rowan raised a hand calmly. "Captain Rourke," he said, "you're under investigation for misconduct, obstruction, and potential civil rights violations." Rourke nearly choked. "Civil rights," he repeated. "This is ridiculous." Tiana stood slowly, her voice calm, steady. "Impossible to ignore. You ignored complaints," she said. "You protected abusive officers." Rourke glared at her. "You don't know anything about this precinct," he snapped. Tiana took one step closer. "I know enough," she replied. "And now the whole country will too." Silence filled the room like heavy fog. Officers stared at their captain, some in shock, some in quiet relief. Because for the first time in years, the walls of the precinct weren't protecting corruption. They were finally cracking open, letting the truth come through. And the man who built those walls could only watch as everything he controlled collapsed right in front of him. The precinct felt different as night fell. The bright lights buzzed overhead, but the building itself felt heavy, as if it finally understood that its years of silence were ending. Officers walked quietly through the hallways, some with guilt on their faces, some with fear, and a few with a sense of relief they hadn't felt in years. Tiana stood near the glass window of the conference room, watching rain begin to fall outside, soft at first, then steady. Maya slept on a small cot in the private room down the hall, her curls spread across the pillow, her breathing soft and peaceful. Tiana felt a quiet strength settle inside her, the kind that came after a long battle, but she wasn't finished. Not yet. The DOJ investigators were still collecting statements, and Internal Affairs had taken Captain Rourke into a separate room to question him formally. The silence from that room said everything. He wasn't talking with his usual arrogance. He wasn't barking orders or threatening careers. He was sitting in a chair, hearing the consequences he thought would never touch him. Senior Officer Miller walked into the conference room again. Rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes carried exhaustion, but also honesty. More officers requested to speak, he said. Some who never talked before. Tiana nodded. Let them, she replied. This is their chance. Miller hesitated, then said quietly, some of us tried to fix things, but every time, someone shut us down. Tiana looked at him. You didn't fail, she said. The system did, in another room. The officers who had protected Rourke's circle sat at a long table, waiting to be questioned. Their usual bravado was gone. No smirks, no swagger. Just the realization that the badge wasn't armor anymore. The DOJ investigators entered and began their work calm and methodical. They asked questions that didn't need threats behind them, because truth itself was the strongest pressure. Meanwhile, in the main hallway, Hale, who had twisted Tiana's arm earlier, sat alone on a metal bench. Elbows on his knees, his face pale, eyes hollow. The weight of his actions pressed on him harder with each passing hour. He replayed the moment at the park over and over again. The grip, the panic, the badge, the crowd. The mistake that ripped the shield of protection right out of his hands. For the first time, he understood the harm he had caused others long before Tiana. Tiana walked past him, and he lifted his head slowly. Agent Brooks, he whispered. She paused. Not with sympathy, but with quiet authority. Yes? She answered. Hale swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he said. The words came out shaky, almost painful. Tiana studied him. Sorry because you regret it, she asked. Or sorry because you were caught? Hale looked down again, unable to answer. The silence told her everything she needed to know. She walked away without another word, down the hallway. Investigator Rowan and Investigator Chen reviewed new statements that kept piling on their desks. Video clips, written notes, audio recordings, even anonymous letters slid under the door. It all formed a stunning picture of a precinct that had rotted from the inside. Rowan turned to Chen. We'll need to expand this, he said. Chen nodded. Agreed, she replied. This is a full corruption probe now. Finally, near midnight, the questioning ended. The IA agent returned to the conference room, where Tiana waited. We finished the initial phase, he said. Rourke is suspended. Hale is detained. And several officers will be relieved of duty by morning. Tiana exhaled slowly. Good, she said. It's a start. The IA agent nodded. And the DOJ wants you at the morning briefing, he added. You were the catalyst. Tiana didn't smile, but there was a calm acceptance in her eyes. She didn't need praise. She needed justice. She walked to the small room where Maya slept. Tiana sat on the edge of the cot, brushing her daughter's curls gently. The little girl stirred and opened her eyes. Mommy? She whispered. Tiana kissed her forehead. I'm right here, she said softly. Everything is okay now. Maya wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. Can we go home? She asked. Tiana hugged her tight soon. She promised. Just a little longer. When she stepped back into the hallway, she found Miller standing nearby, hands in his pockets. You changed everything today, he said quietly. Tiana shook her head. The community did, she replied. They finally got a chance to be heard. Miller nodded slowly. Still, he said, if you hadn't been there, none of this would have come out. Tiana looked toward the window where the rain tapped softly. Sometimes the truth just needs one crack to break open, she said. As the night deepened, officers being escorted out passed by silently. Some defeated, some angry, some relieved. Justice was moving through the building like a cold wind, clearing everything it touched, and for the first time in a long time, the precinct wasn't a place of fear or corruption. It was a place standing face to face with the truth. And the woman who forced that truth into the open walked beside her sleeping daughter calm, steady, unshaken, ready to finish what she started in the morning.